Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today, something most people don't want to hear, but everybody needs to understand. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is not calling, not texting, not explaining, not reminding him of your value. Sometimes the strongest move is letting time do the talking, because time will break a man faster than any argument ever could. Silence creates clarity where words cannot, because words often give people a place to hide. When you keep talking, explaining, defending how you feel, you allow a man to stay comfortable without ever having to think deeply. He hears your words, but he doesn't always feel them. Silence, on the other hand, removes the safety net. It takes away the noise and leaves only space. And in that space, the truth gets loud. When you stop speaking, he starts thinking. When you stop explaining, he starts remembering. Silence forces him to replay moments he once ignored, moments he thought would always be there. A man doesn't process emotion the same way a woman does. Women tend to talk things through, hoping understanding will fix the situation. Men often need absence to understand impact. Silence gives him time to connect dots he never connected before. He begins to notice patterns. He realizes how often you showed up, how consistently you cared, how much energy you poured in without keeping score. While you were present, those things felt normal to him. In silence, they become noticeable. In silence, they become valuable. Silence also removes resistance. When you argue, he prepares defenses. When you explain, he looks for loopholes. When you plead, he feels powerful. But when you go quiet, there's nothing to push against, no argument to win, no emotion to dismiss. That's when the mind turns inward. That's when he starts asking himself questions instead of responding to yours. Questions like why the house feels different, why his phone feels quieter, why the confidence he had suddenly feels shaky. Clarity doesn't come instantly. At first, silence feels easy to him. He may even enjoy it. He tells himself you'll come back, that you always do, that this is just a phase. But as time stretches, silence changes shape. It stops feeling peaceful and starts feeling heavy. The jokes don't land the same. The distractions don't last as long. And that's when clarity shows up, not as regret at first, but as discomfort. Discomfort grows into reflection, and reflection turns into realization. Silence shows him your absence without blaming him for it. It lets him feel the result of his actions without you pointing it out. And that's powerful, because lessons learned through experience stay longer than lessons explained with words. Silence teaches him how much emotional labor you were doing without applause, how much balance you brought without asking for credit, how much strength you carried quietly. At the same time, silence gives you clarity too. It shows you how often you were speaking just to be understood, how often you were shrinking your feelings to keep peace, how often you were carrying conversations alone. In silence, you hear yourself again. You realize that love shouldn't require constant explanation, that the right person doesn't need reminders of your value, and that clarity, once it arrives, changes how you move forever. Distance forces a man to confront his true feelings, because when you are no longer right in front of him, There is nothing left to distract him from what's real. As long as you are present, available, and emotionally accessible, he can avoid going deep. He can enjoy the benefits of you without fully acknowledging the weight of what you mean. Distance removes that comfort. It takes away the routine and replaces it with emptiness, and emptiness has a way of demanding answers. At first, distance feels manageable to him. He tells himself he needed space anyway. He fills his time with noise, work, friends, entertainment, anything to avoid sitting still. But distance doesn't rush. It waits. It stretches time and slowly exposes what was buried under convenience. When the distractions fade, feelings surface. Thoughts he pushed aside start returning. He begins to replay conversations, moments, and memories he once overlooked. Distance turns small memories into loud reminders. A man often doesn't recognize the depth of his emotions until the connection is no longer guaranteed. When you are there, love feels optional. When you are gone, love becomes a question. Distance makes him ask himself what he actually feels, not what he says he feels, not what he pretends to feel, but what shows up when no one is watching. He starts noticing the emotional gaps you used to fill, the calm you brought, the encouragement you offered, the stability you provided without making demands. Distance also removes external validation. Without you reassuring him, checking in, or responding, he has to sit with uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. It shakes confidence. It challenges ego. It forces honesty. He may realize that what he thought was indifference was actually attachment, and what he labeled as freedom was really avoidance. Distance doesn't create feelings, it reveals them. As time goes on, distance stops being about missing you and starts being about understanding himself. He begins to see where he fell short, where he took things for granted, where he assumed time would always be on his side. He recognizes the emotional safety you provided, the kind that allowed him to function without acknowledging it. And once that safety is gone, he feels exposed. Distance also gives you power without confrontation. You are not demanding answers. You are not asking for clarity. You are allowing space to show the truth. And in that space, his true feelings rise to the surface naturally. If his feelings are shallow, distance will fade them away. If they are deep, distance will sharpen them. Either way, you are no longer guessing. Most importantly, distance changes the dynamic. It shifts you from being emotionally available to being emotionally centered. While he is confronting his feelings, you are reclaiming yours. You are no longer reacting. You are observing, and that calm, controlled distance forces honesty on both sides without a single word being spoken. Time exposes whether love is real or convenient, because convenience can survive effort, but it cannot survive absence. When everything is easy, when access is constant, when forgiveness is quick, a man doesn't have to decide how much you truly matter to him. He can enjoy what you bring without asking himself what it would cost to lose you. Time removes that comfort and replaces it with reality. At the beginning, love mixed with convenience feels the same. Attention feels genuine. Promises sound sincere. Presence feels like commitment. But time has a way of separating intention from action. As days pass without you, he no longer has immediate access to your care, your energy, your emotional availability. That's when he learns whether he was invested in you as a person or simply in how you made his life easier. Convenient love fades quietly. It doesn't fight. It doesn't reflect deeply. It doesn't change. When love is only about comfort, time makes it disappear without resistance. He fills the space with something else, someone else, or distractions, and moves on without much inner conflict. And that in itself becomes the answer. Time doesn't lie. It doesn't negotiate. It simply reveals. Real love, however, behaves differently under time. It doesn't rush to replace. It doesn't forget easily. It grows heavier the longer the absence lasts. With real love, time becomes uncomfortable. The silence starts to bother him. He feels the weight of choices he didn't make when he had the chance. He begins to understand that what he lost was not just a person, but a connection that grounded him. Time also removes performance. Without you there, he can't pretend. He can't rely on words to maintain a bond. He can't use temporary effort to keep you close. Time demands consistency, and consistency is where real love shows itself. If he reaches out with humility, if he reflects without blaming, if he grows without being pushed, that's time revealing depth. If he stays distant and unchanged, that's time revealing convenience. While time is testing him, it is also protecting you. It stops you from over-investing in someone who hasn't chosen you fully. It gives you space to observe behavior instead of listening to promises. You stop asking what he feels and start watching what he does. And that shift is powerful because love proven over time feels different than love spoken in the moment. Time doesn't rush answers, but it always delivers them. It shows you whether he misses you because he loves you or because he lost access to what you provided. And once time reveals that truth, you no longer have to wonder where you stand. Absence shifts power back to self-worth because when you stop being constantly available, you stop measuring your value by someone else's response. When you are always present, always responding, always adjusting to keep the connection alive, the balance quietly shifts away from you. Your worth starts to feel tied to whether he notices, whether he reaches out, whether he chooses you in that moment. Absence breaks that cycle and hands the focus back to where it belongs. When you step away, something important happens inside you. The urgency fades. You are no longer waiting for a message to validate your importance. You are no longer overthinking silence or rereading conversations to find meaning. Absence gives you room to breathe, and in that space, you remember who you were before you started proving yourself. You reconnect with the parts of you that didn't need permission to feel confident, calm, or complete. Self-worth grows when it is no longer negotiated. As long as you stay available to someone who is unsure, you keep negotiating your value. You compromise your boundaries, hoping clarity will come later. Absence ends that negotiation. It quietly says that your time, energy, and presence are valuable, and they are not handed out without care. That message is powerful, even if it is never spoken. At the same time, absence changes how he sees you, not because you are manipulating, but because your absence removes predictability. Predictability often leads to complacency. When he knows you will always be there, he doesn't have to rise. When you step back, he has to confront the possibility of losing you, and that possibility forces respect. Respect doesn't come from chasing. It comes from knowing when to step away. Absence also helps you detach from outcomes. You stop obsessing over what he will do next and start paying attention to how you feel now. You become less reactive and more grounded. Decisions stop being driven by fear of loss and start being guided by self-respect. That's when power returns to you, not as control over him, but as control over yourself. Self-worth is reinforced when you realize you don't need to convince anyone to choose you. The right person will feel your absence and respond with effort, not excuses. The wrong person will drift away, and absence will make that clear without confrontation. Either way, you win clarity. Absence is not about punishment or pride. It's about alignment. It allows your actions to match your value. It reminds you that love should feel mutual, not like a constant audition. And as your self-worth strengthens, you naturally attract healthier dynamics because you are no longer willing to settle for attention that costs you your peace. Men feel lost deeper when it's uninterrupted, because constant contact softens the impact of separation. When you keep checking in, responding, or offering emotional access, you delay the moment he truly feels what life is like without you. Interruption acts like a painkiller. It eases discomfort, but prevents healing and understanding. When loss is uninterrupted, it becomes real, and reality is what forces emotional awareness. At first, uninterrupted loss feels light to him. He assumes the silence is temporary. He believes you'll reach out eventually, just like before. That belief keeps him relaxed. But as time continues and nothing changes, uncertainty sets in. The mind starts asking questions it avoided when reassurance was available. He begins to notice that the connection is not paused, it's gone. And that realization hits differently. Without interruptions, there are no emotional resets. He can't rely on a message to lift his mood or a conversation to restore familiarity. The absence remains day after day, creating a steady pressure. That pressure forces reflection. He starts thinking about moments he dismissed, conversations he didn't take seriously, and efforts he assumed would never stop. Uninterrupted loss removes the illusion of control. Loss also deepens because it challenges identity. Many men don't realize how much emotional stability they receive from a woman's presence. Your support, belief, and consistency often become part of how he functions. When that disappears without warning or explanation, it leaves a gap he can't easily fill. Friends, distractions, and routines don't provide the same grounding. Over time, that gap grows louder. Uninterrupted loss creates contrast. He compares life with you to life without you. And contrast sharpens awareness. The peace he once felt becomes noticeable only after it's gone. The ease of being understood becomes rare. The sense of being supported without asking becomes a memory. That comparison is what deepens the loss, because it's not just about missing you. It's about recognizing what you represented. While he is feeling the weight of uninterrupted loss, you are reclaiming your emotional space. You are no longer reopening wounds by staying connected. You are allowing distance to do its work naturally. That strength is quiet, but it's powerful. It shows maturity and self-respect, not anger or resentment. Uninterrupted loss doesn't guarantee he will come back, but it guarantees truth. It reveals whether he is capable of growth, accountability, and appreciation. And regardless of his response, uninterrupted loss ensures that you are no longer stuck in emotional limbo, waiting for someone to realize your worth while you keep proving it. Growth happens when you stop explaining and start allowing, because constant explanation keeps you trapped in a loop of seeking understanding from someone who is not ready to give it. Every time you explain how you feel, why you reacted, or what you need, you are offering another chance for your emotions to be debated, minimized, or misunderstood. Allowing, on the other hand, is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't chase clarity. It steps back and lets behavior speak louder than intention. When you stop explaining, you stop overextending, you stop pouring energy into conversations that go nowhere. You stop hoping that the right combination of words will suddenly change someone's awareness. Growth begins the moment you realize that people don't change because they finally understand your pain. They change because they feel the consequences of their choices. Allowing creates those consequences naturally without bitterness or blame. Allowing also shifts your focus inward. Instead of watching his reactions, you start paying attention to your own needs. You ask yourself whether this connection brings peace or constant anxiety. You begin to notice how much emotional labor you were doing just to keep things stable. In allowing, you give yourself permission to rest, and rest is where clarity grows. There is strength in restraint. Not every feeling needs to be explained. Not every disappointment needs a conversation. When you allow space instead of forcing resolution, you protect your dignity. You show that your boundaries are not dependent on someone else's understanding. That kind of self-respect builds confidence quietly from the inside out. Allowing also invites truth. Without your explanations guiding the narrative, he has to respond from his own awareness. If he steps up, reflects, and changes, it comes from within, not from pressure. If he stays the same, that truth becomes clear as well. Either way, you are no longer responsible for carrying the connection alone. Growth happens when responsibility is shared or released. As you allow, you begin to detach from outcomes. You stop measuring progress by his attention or effort. You stop waiting for signs, messages, or apologies. That detachment is not coldness, it's maturity. It allows you to stay open without being vulnerable to constant disappointment. You learn that your peace is not something to gamble on potential. Allowing teaches patience with yourself. You recognize that walking away from explanation is not giving up, it's choosing alignment. You trust that what is meant for you will meet you with clarity, not confusion, and that trust changes how you move through relationships. You become less reactive and more grounded. Growth is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in how you respond differently, how you no longer chase closure, How you choose silence over chaos. By allowing instead of explaining, you step into a version of yourself that is calmer, stronger, and no longer dependent on being understood to feel secure.